Welcome to the Friendly Geordies podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
Troubling times ahead.
There's very, very troubling times. Can we start off with the reaction of the marches?
Yes, we can.
We just watched Avi Yemeni almost get beat up.
Get dicked.
His poor security people got beaten up instead of him.
Yeah, but I think that judging by the size of them, they can handle a couple of thrashes.
Yeah, but dude, the amount of people that were there, the thrashes were quite intense.
Yeah, it was Gulliver's Travel, wasn't it? It was a giant getting hacked by 1,000 tiny men.
So is this a controversial thing to say that, like, a lot of those marchers were straight up neo-Nazis? And I couldn't firstly understand why Avi Yemeni would get beaten up.
Yes, as was I. I had the same problem. And then it suddenly dawned on both of us.
Yeah, and then I was like, of
That's
course.
why.
A throwback to the old days.
History repeating itself.
Dude, I don't understand. Like, I was saying this to Jordan just before. Like, I would imagine that those two forces, Nazis and, like, Zionists, would at least temporarily form an alliance. But the hatred goes deep.
Yes, it does. It really does. They can't. It's called coalition building.
It's called coalition building, dude. I don't know.
It's really strange because then you had the leader of the Neos coming up and saying, we need to put aside our petty differences and come together as one monolith when he was just out there trying to beat the shit out of Avi.
It does not take long for them to change that opinion. Well, I don't know exactly why he got beaten up. Did he get beaten up just because he's Jewish, or was there something else that was happening there?
I'm sure that they have their own version of internal politics where, to the outside viewer, we get the general brush of things, which is that he is the J-man. But I think that there's probably also some deep-seated political inconsistencies that they hone in on, and that's why it results in them getting a bashing.
Yeah, dude. And, like, if you think about it, I guess from their perspective, his name is Avi Yemeni. Both identities, they're not too keen. So it's a bit, dude, like, we're laughing, but it's a little, you're not scared at all, are you?
No, I mean,
No, of course not, because, like, dude, my identity, Muslim, and then unfortunately also communist.
Muslim communist.
Just these guys, the leader of the neo-Nazis.
We talk about walking contradictions, but yeah, go on.
Oh my God, I was like, oh my God, he hates every bit of me.
Time to go, Ali. Time to go.
Dude, I love how real Rukshan knew what's up. He knew what the real situation was. He was hanging right at the back. He wasn't even involved.
Yeah, no, he was out.
He was out.
He was out of there.
And then his camera pans to him. He's like, well, I know that they don't like people with my skin color. I will stay right here.
Let's be honest, my channel isn't successful enough to have big burly security guards.
Let's be real. I don't think they have heard of me, and they will consider me something very different.
Look, I think that generally speaking, it was yes, I guess it was unfair to characterize everybody at those rallies as being a Nazi, especially seeing as those guys came in and everybody seemed to be quite upset with their presence being there. I would say, though, that the Nazis had a consistent worldview. You then go to anyone getting interviewed on the street and it was, I just want to keep Australian. What's that? I don't know, just wear a flag and yell a lot.
Yeah, like, none of that stuff.
What are their points? This is my point about all protests. What are your points? What do you want? Most of the time, I think they just want to get out and be pissed off because it's a day out. It really felt like a lot of it, there was very little difference between that and people going to the Sydney Olympics in 2000. There was a bunch of people walking around with Australian flags on in confused directions with people in megaphones being like, we're supposed to be marching this way. No, a lot of you are marching in the exact opposite direction. No, don't go down there. That's where the pro-Palestinian marches are.
And that's the other thing about the Aussie flag. Who is that offensive to? Like, they're showing Australian flag to immigrants as if, like, immigrants don't like the flag. We have no problems with the flag.
Yeah, no, you got the wrong people. It's not immigrants that hate the Australian flag. It's annoying white people in the exact suburbs that you're marching in Melbourne that don't like the flag.
I think that's the case. Like, dude, I suppose like for some people the Australian flag represents colonialism.
Yeah, but again, annoying white hipsters from Fitzroy,
Yeah,
that's what they
exactly,
see. The
but, like,
vast majority of people don't see it like
immigrants do not mind that stuff.
that. It's really strange because you really should have been, if you wanted to make a successful movement, what you should have been doing is engaging, ironically, the immigrant community. Your numbers would have been huge because, as we all know, they're coming in boat droves, but they also really hate immigrants. So get them on board. And they love the Australian flag.
Well, you could tell there were some
A
like,
million immigrants against immigrants.
who was
Should have
that,
been
like,
that.
who was a woke lady in the marches who was like,
he just want to be left alone.
we just want the one nation is Australia. Without Australia, there is nothing.
Yep.
That lady, dude. Her accent sounded like she came like maybe 5 hours ago.
What's that?
Oh, that's my phone. Sorry,
Oh, that's yours, is it?
my bad. Yeah, so that I don't know. I don't understand the whole I think in their head immigrants hate the Australian flag, and that is not the case. It's not triggering a like I guess the Hamas flags are triggering them, but the Australian flags aren't not so much.
Yeah, it's not the Australian flags. I think.
And not like and then they go like at the like right after New York like Aussie Aussie Aussie. Oh, we love that shit, dude. That's
Yeah,
like
I know.
that's a cultural quirk that every immigrant absolutely loves.
I think everyone in the world is jealous that their chant is an Aussie, Aussie, Aussie.
Exactly,
It's
dude.
the funnest chant
It
out
is
of all of them.
it's the best fucking chant.
It's the best one.
And I hate that it's become pretty like everyone overseas now knows it. There was a point where like you would say Aussie, 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 and only the Aussies would say oi, oi,
Oi,
oi.
oi, oi.
But now it's like famous enough that everyone does it.
Yeah, no, they're co-opting our culture, and I don't like it. And the other thing is that what I noticed from a lot of the protesters getting interviewed, it was, as suspected, mostly just an anti-Anthony Albanese rally.
Well, that's
And
what
then they're
Sky News
surprised
is
why the Labor
painting
Party
it
is
as.
condemning it. Huh?
I think that's what Sky News is painting it as.
Don't you reckon that there was a bunch of people there at the rallies saying, all I know is Albo has to go. And here's demand number 2, no renewables. See, this is, look, I just think it's very coincidental that we have had this quote-unquote mass migration since the Howard years, and then as soon as Labor gets a solid majority, all of a sudden we have mass anti-migration.
Well, that's the thing. The renewables one, I suppose, somewhat makes slightly more sense, even though I would remind you that Liberal Party is the one who committed to net zero 2050 as well. So, but with the immigrant one, dude, that is bipartisan as. Like, I don't understand. If anything, if you look at the numbers in Albo's period, the rate of immigration has gone down as opposed to going up.
And they can use that bullshit stat that seems to inflate all the time. Like it used to be 500,000 migrants. Now it's like 1 million or over 1 million migrants. They say they really just, I don't know. It started with inflated Bureau of Statistics numbers that they're not reading correctly because it also includes student visas. It also includes people that have gone in and out of the country and applied on different visas. It includes people that are on a visa, but they come back in, and then that visa has to go through a renewal process. So that counts for like 4 or 5 ghost people. Look, I'm not saying that migration isn't too high. I've been on that train for a long time, but the numbers that they are citing are so fantastical. And then after that, it then does the Facebook meme route where you had all of these people coming in and saying, there's 10,000 people coming in a day, when 1,500 is based off of bad Bureau of Statistics readings. So they're just inflating it more and more and more. And that's the real force of what is happening here. I think that there is I'd be very interested to know who were the people that were organizing these rallies, because by the flavor of it, I know that the press was definitely moving it that way, but by the flavor of it and people that were there that were just saying over and over, Albo's a clown, he's a traitor of this country, it really just seems to be insert next, we've got to get rid of the government, meaning you're imagining that there's some sort of money behind this that seems to be riding off the coattail of the anti-migrant marches in Britain. It seems to be just, maybe we can catch lightning in a bottle and get our own Nigel Farage. But the problem is, your version of Nigel Farage is Pauline Hanson. Like, she says what she thinks, but she also says it in a quivering, scared way. She's not a charming spiv.
But dude, like, what scares me is that, look, I believe in harmony for Australia, so I completely understand lowering the immigration rates. I'm not against that, but I am looking ahead, and I am concerned about something. For one, the skill upgrade that they're talking about, our economy is becoming more and more specialized, which requires specific skills, which we don't have in this country to the extent that we need them. I'm not saying that everyone in this country is incapable of it, but there's still clearly a gap.
There's quite a few people at the march that I can guarantee you are not capable of that
They're the
skills
least
upgrade.
productive in some sense, right? They're, first of all, their arguments also don't make sense, so they're not literate.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're
Usually a good
researching.
indicator is if there is a woman with weirdly dyed hair, probably not going to be one of the skilled manufacturers that we need.
So now if that is what we're looking at, we need to fill the skill gap to basically keep the wheel of the economy rolling. One option is to upgrade the skills of the existing population. Now, I love that idea. I'm willing to pay as many taxes as I possibly can for better education for Australians, skills upgrade, and all of that. But let's be real for 1 second. That's a hard task, if not impossible, to achieve. It's not that any governments are constantly trying that, and they're unsuccessful. And if that's the case, dude, I don't think they're going to stop immigration. Maybe you'll have periods of pauses to satisfy your local electorate, but then once the election's over, they're going to fucking ramp that shit back up because they have to answer to their capitalist overlords.
Well, it's not even just capitalist overlords. Don't you think I think we can all agree the GDP going into negative growth is something that we all want to avoid.
Well,
unless you're Japanese, they seem to be pretty cool with it. But
well, not only the problem with negative growth of GDP is it's not just the economic disadvantage that you get. I mean, certainly there's that. People have it tough and everything. But then it will also just accentuate this issue as well.
Yes, exactly.
So like you're in a really bad situation. So in order to avoid that, what are you going to do? You're just going to keep getting migrants.
Yeah.
And I don't think it matters if it's liberal or labor.
No.
As you can tell from like the last 3 decades, this is pretty bipartisan. And I don't know if there's any other solution to this.
No, there isn't no solution. That's it. You either upskill the population or you ship in migrants.
Yeah.
That's seriously the only... Okay, there's option 3 as well. Computers become smarter than us, which they probably will in 5 to 10 years, and then we don't have to worry about this problem at all.
So
We've got new problems.
That will help with like certain... Okay, so obviously robotics and artificial intelligence and creating algorithms, that will help us with a certain level of jobs, right? The entry-level positions of coders and things. But I don't know if that's where the skills gap is restricted to that class. I'm happy that can get resolved. Hopefully, in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll be able to, we wouldn't have to get that many immigrants for those kind of jobs. But there's still a bunch of jobs that would need to be done.
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on how intelligent AI becomes. Say, for instance, when it comes to building, for instance, and also probably just managing out inconsistencies in the economy, as in algorithms that say you need so-and-so amount of building materials here and so-and-so amount of building materials there. A lot of that would probably help with making the economy just run more efficiently. But, as you say, you will probably always need a level of migration coming in. This is the thing that is fantasy land about the people that are marching there when they say, oh, we just need to pause migration. You're never going to do that. On top of that, naturally, a population does need to grow. It doesn't need to grow at exorbitant rates. Typically they seem to think that it should be around like a little bit above the 1% mark. It does just naturally need to do that. And so we're not having kids. And you can sit there and say like, yeah, because that's because of the cost of living crisis and all that kind of stuff. But like, again, the problem will be accentuated if you reduce migration. Like, cost of living will get worse. This is the devil's bargain that is happening here. And I think that unless you are being honest about the challenges and how to address them, which these people just don't seem to be concerned about, which I see is a very common trait in a bunch of protests. It seems to be people just saying, stop this issue immediately, which is never an issue that you can stop, be it climate change, COVID, Gaza, migrants. It's never something that you can just turn off like a tap or switch off. It's always going to be infinitely more complicated than that. And these people never seem to be able to look at, okay, well, if you did do this, theoretically, if you did do this, what would be the knock-on effects to everything else? They never seem to want to look at that. There was that one guy that they had the interview of that was like, you should just stop it for 5 years. And then people say, oh, well, that'd be bad for the economy. Well, here's my solution. Not just one insane suggestion. He had another one. He had two very simple, quick fixes. Stop all migration for 5 years and cut the government in half. And somehow, cutting the government in half will cause the economy to boom into a golden age like we have never seen, according to this man.
Well, it won't, but that will help the neo-Nazis. The neo-Nazis would want that to happen. They would want the economy to crash because they know that would be fertile ground for them for the further recruitment. I mean, look, I don't know what you think about this, but I would imagine that about a quarter of Australia's population is sympathetic to the viewpoints of the rallies.
Oh, no, I would think... I can't remember what the stats were. I think it was something like above 70% of the population saying that migration's too high.
Well, I think migration is too high would be 70%, but I think there's 25% that are in the kind of white nationalist stream of things.
White nationalist stream of things, right? Okay, so just stop, quote unquote migrants from the third world.
Because we know in the U.S. they're 30%. The hard MAGA crowd is 30% of the U.S. population.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine Australian numbers are similar, and they're not enough to constantly dominate politics, but they're good. They're a big enough pressure group to basically chokehold progress.
Yes.
And so what I'm saying is if the economy does badly as a result of these populist measures, that would again work in favor of these organizations because they'll have way more recruits.
I hate that. Isn't it just terrible that a lot of the time in politics, you get rewarded for not finding solutions. You get rewarded for making more problems. Isn't that so infuriating?
Yeah, it is.
That's the whole thing. All the fringes of politics, fringes get
benefit,
benefits from it. They get benefits from sticking sprigs in the sockets. They get it from that.
And that's the name, fringes. While the economy is stable, while the country is stable, they remain fringes. But as soon as things get bad,
they become the majority.
They become the mainstream. And that's what they fantasize about.
Yeah, okay, so that's what it was. Exactly, but they know this from the basics, that they can stoke up their base by fear-mongering and blocking progress, and then that works, so they just want more of that.
Back in my communist days, that would be the objective.
I know.
The objective would be...
Oh, it's so evil. I hate it.
That's why
infiltrate organizations and deliberately make them not run.
Well, not just... Well, I think to some extent that could be... You could argue is acceptable to some extent. Infiltrate organizations. But what is really fucked is the idea that you hope that the economy crashes. You hope that there's massive unemployment.
Yeah, the acceleration theory.
So just,
and again, it's such a... All of these people that are up... This is why, as we were pointing out in a previous video, all of these fringe movements always sprig out of the middle class because it doesn't matter to them. What,
no.
It doesn't matter to them if the economy crumbles tomorrow. They'll be fine. And so that's why they sit there and think, oh, yeah, if we destroy the economy, our political view will start getting more momentum. Because it's not real to them.
They're radicals. And in order to make radical changes, you need the society to be open to such
Isn't that so bad that it's I deliberately want society to fail just so I can validate my ideology? How selfish can you get?
But what I will say, one thing in defense, is that there has been this viewpoint amongst our politicians where they use migration not to plug gaps, but just for growth. More mouths means more demand, and then you get like a few percentage points of GDP growth just from that. And I think that is an effective but really unsustainable policy.
Yeah.
And
But that's what I'm saying. That is the difference between Labor and Liberal migration. Right there, what you've just identified. I wish that you could tell people this, but they're never going to listen because unfortunately, and this is something that I would love to change, but it will never change. Migration is purely a cultural issue. Like people see it through the lens of culture. And so you have all the cucks coming out and like bashing the Nazis, and they're seeing it as like, I'm a good person because I like people from across the world and there shouldn't be borders. It's like a cultural identity thing. And then you have obviously the pro-Australia marches that are like, we should just keep Australia Australian. It's cultural. They're really not looking at it through the lens of like what actually benefits the country or not. That's not what their issue is there.
well, I guess they are, but for them, what benefits the country is like an ethno
Yeah, well, what
white
benefits
state,
my cultural upbringing?
Yeah.
That's what benefits.
And they also, I don't
nation.
think, don't care about whether the economy does that well, as long as it's an ethno state. I think they're happy with that. They're not looking for
Yeah.
riches. They're not greedy like that. Their objectives are slightly different. Your objective would be poverty reduction, education for all, standard of living. There's like an ethno culture where the power resides clearly in the dominant group, which is the white nationalists.
That would be success to them, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would be.
So yeah, they're just looking at it from a completely, like, just objectively bad angle for their own ethnicity that they purport to stand up for.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's the whole thing. And like they can put it there all they like by just saying like, oh, it's all low skilled migrants that are coming in as Uber drivers and all that kind of stuff. And we don't need Uber drivers. They'll have those kind of arguments. We can just learn to be self reliant. And it's like until it doesn't happen, until that doesn't happen, people will say yeah. But when they actually live in that world where all of a sudden all these services just stop working, they'll be on the streets marching about that. It'll just keep creating more and more marches, more and more unrest.
I think the Uber Eats issue should be resolved soon enough. So so you would get like international students coming in from wherever, and they'd be doing Uber Eats. But I think the threshold to get permanent residency now is so much higher that they just stay in Australia for like 4 years and eventually have to go back. So you can say whether it's good or bad, but I just feel that group of immigrants that came in and did Uber Eats, I think that's going to slowly go down. But that doesn't mean immigration itself is going to go down. In fact, it's going to be worse. At least with Uber Eats, dude. And this is going to be like a little, I'm going to say straight up, at least with Uber Eats, when you see white Australians look at someone doing that, they go like, well, I wouldn't even want to do this. Like, it's menial jobs. So they're annoyed by it. But what they get really pissed off with is immigrants coming in and, getting rich, buying bigger houses, outpricing them in their neighborhoods, driving Mercedes and big cars. And so if you get rid of the Uber Eats, what you're really doing is you're getting the skilled migrants. And because they're in demand, their salaries are much higher. So you're going to see like inequality between the immigrants and inequality between, it'll just grow. Where like Aussies will be poorer and immigrants will start getting richer. So there's a two-pronged effect with not having Uber Eats. Because there is a level of satisfaction for white Australians who believe in a nationalist ethno-state that, well, immigrants, they might come in, but they're working at kebab shops. They're working at they're doing Uber Eats. Like it's an underclass. It's annoying, but it's acceptable. But when they see themselves as the underclass, then they're going to get violent.
Yeah.
And that's the future. The future isn't Uber Eats. The future is your boss is an immigrant. And that too if you have a job. It's a scary, scary future.
Yeah, it's look, I don't think that it is at the level that it is in, say, Britain or the United States or Europe, because as much as we can sit there and say we have historic high numbers of migration, there really hasn't been the integration problems here that there has been in other Western countries. And obviously there's been a lot. I can name them, but I'm scared for my life. But the point is that it's you know, in Britain, you can very much imagine Nigel Farage winning an election purely on migration. They can sit there and say on Sky News that migration has not been front and center of elections. It's been front and center of many elections. Many, many, many elections in my lifetime.
Dude, I think the last 10 years, it is the single most important issue.
Yeah. The last one, that was pretty much all Dutton had.
Yeah.
And look at his results. It's not enough. People think, even when they sit there, and as you're saying, they sit there and they sympathize with the anti-migrant movement, it's not enough to shift their vote. They've got other concerns. It's not that overpowering.
Yeah, but does it matter if it shifts their vote? Because the other party's going to do exactly the same thing. As
No, but I'm saying that, like,
record.
even just bringing out the rhetoric and saying that, and or just bringing up like a Nigel Farage figure, there's never going to be the oxygen for it here.
Yeah, as long as
never say never, but I'm just saying at the moment it's not there.
It's not there at the moment because the economy is still, it's being propped up, but man, if there's a housing collapse for whatever reasons, that will change, and it will be pretty scary. And the scary thing isn't that like, oh, the Liberal Party will come in. The scary thing is when like this entire pressure group realizes that it doesn't matter who comes in. Like this policy will stay consistent, and then you'll have some like real societal upheaval.
But someone politically will take advantage of that.
Oh, absolutely, dude. What do you mean? Like, there's people waiting for that moment.
Yes.
Like that leader, the neo-Nazi, he's waiting for that moment. He's been prepping to take advantage of that opportunity. He's just not getting it.
Yeah.
Hopefully he never gets it, Yeah. That's the fingers crossed. But yes.
I don't think it'd ever go that deep, though.
You think so? How come?
Because the conditions for it to go that deep have to be really bad. Like, as in, worse than what is happening in the United States and Britain. What's happening in the United States and Britain is not that guy in charge. What's happening in the United States and Britain is Pauline Hanson being in charge. Pauline Hanson is a lot more institutionalized than that man, you know?
Oh, for sure. Pauline Hanson, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but like, this is the world we live in. It's somewhat harmless, actually. Compared to that dude who wants a militarized society and he wants everyone to organize. He was the scary man because he was right.
Yeah.
In his strategy.
Yeah,
That's
he knew exactly what he was doing.
He knows exactly how to get this done.
He's got a clear vision and he knows how to articulate it.
When he was saying like, you've come here as individuals, get to know your friends over here, add them on Facebook, organize, start sharing your ideas. It's like, oh my God, dude, that is the way to go if you want to achieve that.
That's the way to do it. And that is what is always sorely lacking in most protest movements. Most protest movements is just people getting in front of the microphone and yelling, F you Albanese. That's not going to do anything. What that guy's doing is that'll do something.
And then the scariest thing was when he said this, he was like, once you get organized, then they'll come after you. And then it's game on. It's like, dude, he wants
the game.
He wants the authorities to start imprisoning them and, make it a big
creating martyr figures.
Well, it'll also create huge marketing for them.
Yes, exactly.
That's exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So they're looking to get bashed up. They've been, oh man, it is. It's a scary proposition. Do you think we're like kind of in the 1930s era?
Yeah, but I think that we're in the lame LARP 1930s era. I don't think we're there. As in, conditions in the 1930s in Germany were so much worse than they are across the West. Even when you go to places that really are down the toilet like Britain, it ain't Europe in the 30s. It's not there. That's my big point, is that for economic conditions to get bad enough that you get another Hitler rising up, it has to be hyperinflation, Zimbabwe level stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
true. I mean, yeah, it needs to get much worse for it to become a real potent threat.
Yeah.
Let's
And
hope.
if it gets like a little bit bad, like it gets in Britain and the US, you've got more of a rise of one nation.
Yeah, I think there's enough safeguards to protect in that situation, but yeah, the hyperinflation stuff will just then it's then it's anyone's guess what force is going to come in and take over.
And it is really, I really don't like this. Why do you think all those types, I'm talking about the socialists, quote unquote, and the national socialists, quote unquote, they all love to live there, don't they? They all love to live in the 30s. That's where they like to mentally pretend they are. It's sort of the same as neckbeards doing medieval reenactments, but it's the 1930s.
Well, for them, you got to think about it. They're highly political people. They think about politics and they think about societal trends all the time. So they prefer an era which is extremely politicized, where everyone cares about this. Because in times of affluence, they're just fringes, where like no one cares about them. So they love to live in the 30s because
everyone cared about it.
Everyone cared about it. Everyone was political. Everyone had a position. Everyone was in different camps, fascist, socialist, and they loved that. That's their entertainment, and everyone's into it at that time. Yeah. Well, this is a developing story.
I think honestly what's going to happen is it will be in the news cycle for a couple of days, and then it'll peter out into nothing. And they'll probably find some other attack angle to hit Albanese on.
Well, speaking of attack angles to hit Albanese on, so apparently stunning scenes have erupted in Ballarat, where Anthony Albanese was. They chased him out in tractors, him and Jacinta Allen. Now, I want you to to Albanese's credit, I don't know if this is a good thing or time will tell, but to Albanese's credit, he was essentially like talking to these people who used to be coal miners, right? And I'll read through exactly his quotes, but I'll just give you a gist of it. But he's telling them, these guys are upset that there's no coal mines and stuff. And this is like, we don't have jobs. And Albanese is saying all of the regulations that we're putting on coal mining to stop has not even come into effect. So the fact that there's no coal mines here in the 21st century are because of market forces. And so it's not that I'm stopping your job. This is where the market's going. And he then said that climate change is a reality and you have to understand that we have to move towards the transition. Anyway, so these guys obviously were not having it. Let me just read what Albanese said. That's just the truth. And there hasn't been any regulation stopping that. He's talking about coal mining, coal plants. There is still nothing stopping that. Now, if someone wants to build a coal-fired power station, they can go ahead and do it. It hasn't happened because the market has determined that it doesn't stack up. We do need energy, and the cheapest form of new energy is renewables. One man shouted back, "We don't want it," while a woman in Vic Farmer's shirt jumped up holding a noose around her neck.
Around her neck?
Yeah. The moderator called for calm, said that the session would have to be stopped if the audience wouldn't be quiet. Albanese reminded the crowd that net zero was adopted by Morrison government, but conceded that regional communities had not been properly consulted. He says, "I won't come along and say we're going to do something with new coal-fired power stations when it didn't happen. I'm not going to come along and say that the solution is something that might happen sometime in 2040s, which is what the opposition's nuclear plan is about. People need to be treated with respect." But dude, they were not. Anyways, you can understand but they were not having it. They had to stop the session. The crowd started chanting, "No one wants you here, Albo. What about our voice?" And anyway, they tried to leave and they were chased out and then these guys with tractors came in. So Albo actually left with her security team, but Jacinta Allen was kind of stuck. They blocked her exit in these tractors. She escaped through a side exit, and then there were other tractors over there as well. Anyways, they got out.
Surrounded by tractors.
Yeah,
Oh man.
and that's the situation where.
Rural Australia.
But there is a level of entitlement in the sense that
I'll say.
you have to basically manufacture a market for coal. If the market isn't doing it, then you subsidize. That's what they're saying. Subsidize coal. And if you subsidize coal, you are wasting money because you're not transitioning, but you're also ruining the planet at the same time.
For
And-
them.
And there's a level of entitlement. Like I know that there's jobs and there's mortgages and all of that, but there is a level of entitlement where you're saying that the government's job is to subsidize my sector, which is actually destroying the earth at the same time. And you must do it. Otherwise, we'll not vote for you, or we don't want any. We'll chase you down with tractors and threaten you.
Yeah. Also, there's just a level of entitlement in you must subsidize my sector.
Yeah, but like
Full
I can
stop.
understand the subsidization of the sector if there's like an argument to be made that
There's economic gains
there's
in it.
economic gains there.
Yeah.
There's a future there.
Yeah.
But there's none of that. There's,
No, yeah, that's the whole thing. You want to be subsidizing an industry that is on the up, not an industry that is on the down.
And that's why the market isn't doing it, because they know that too. The market isn't like, if that wasn't the case, they would be making coal-fired power because
Yes.
profit motive would drive it.
Yes.
So it's a really, really tricky situation. And I don't know how to deal with it. I guess, like, how do you explain to people that, like, the government's responsibility isn't to make sure that everyone...
Well, this is
is
the whole
rich.
thing.
Like,
No
it's-
one wants to hear that anymore. As you're saying, we are an extremely entitled society, and everybody, as you were pointing out, as much as people complain about the nanny state, really what they want is a nanny state. But what they want is a bad nanny. They want a nanny that just gives them the rattle and gives them the milk and gives them all of the toys that they want and never tells them that it's bedtime. That's what they want.
Yeah.
They just want a shitty mum.
They want a rich, shitty mum.
They want a rich, shitty
They
mum.
want to live. You want to be one of those like Druggo Paddington kids that keeps just getting money magically into their account. But the problem is, dude, like that money is not always going to magically come into their account. At some point, if you just follow these measures that does not care about increasing your economic output, but is just subsidizing and essentially putting people on a dole, you'll eventually not have enough money.
Exactly.
And then what
And
happens?
then what?
Crisis all over. Scary
Very
thing.
troubling times,
You're saying
but
that as a
also
joke, but it's true.
very hilarious.
Very hilarious.
I mean, also, 'cause I don't know, but I feel like even Albo, a fat 6-year-old man, could probably outrun tractors. It's a Simpsons joke. Getting run out of town on a tractor.
On a tractor. Albo in his BMW.
Get
just
him!
Swishes past
Block
us.
the entrances. Beep, 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 beep.
Oh, I
Wait, did they get tractors into the town hall? Where was this?
No,
Was it
just outside.
It was
at the
outside.
exits,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Well, that's what this news report said. Okay, now speaking of very concerning news, the online community is rife with rumors that Trump is actually dead.
Yeah, all right. Are we over that? Has he made an appearance?
No, he hasn't made an appearance yet. But do you know why they think he's dead?
Because of his hands?
Well, he was dying.
Yeah, okay.
He's dead because one is that apparently he hasn't made any public appearances in a while, and there's not any scheduled, which is a bit off. Then they asked JD Vance that if Trump died, are you ready for office? And instead of saying like, absolutely not, I'm not going to entertain this, he was like, I'm ready. I'm so ready.
God, he sucks.
And then he
doesn't
says, and then he says this. He's like, the last, I don't know, however, 200 days or 120, however long it's been, that was the best training that you could get to be the president.
Can he not be such a dick for
Yes,
even a
it's
second?
such-
Even to his boss.
Even to his boss.
Even to his boss, the guy that made him vice president. No loyalty.
And then lastly, why they think he's dead is because the Simpsons creators were at a press conference and they were asked a question, is this going to be the last season? And they said that actually the last season was supposed to be the last season. But we're going to keep making this until someone's dead. Wink, wink. And when he's dead, and they make this prediction, they're like, when that someone dies, there's people are going to dance on the streets. And JD Vance, President JD Vance, will make it illegal to dance, and we want to do a show on that.
What?
That's what they said.
Oh man,
Well, sorry,
I
an
gotta
episode.
look into this. I don't even know who the writers of The Simpsons are
The
anymore.
no, not the writers, the producers.
The executive producer,
the
Sam
producers.
Simmons.
Yeah.
Wow, how
The
old
main
must that
dudes.
guy be? Speaking of people that die, are you sure he's not talking about himself?
Okay, I'll just read this. The third element that's fueling the story is the Simpsons creator Matt Groening and said, "We'll continue on to Variety. Honestly, 36 was where we were going to end it. No, there's no end in sight. We're going to keep going. We're going to go on until someone dies. When you know who dies, we predict that there will be dancing in the streets, and
Yeah.
President Vance will ban dancing."
And he said this during the rumors of Trump
No. He said
dying,
this
or
before. He said this before. So people are saying like these guys are basically prophets, and Trump is probably dead.
Well, The Simpsons are prophets. Remember when they predicted that Trump would be president and that he would leave huge deficits?
Yeah,
You remember that? That's nuts.
yeah, that is.
That
insane.
was like, I'd have to say, I'm going to say 14 years before Trump was president.
Yeah, they
It's
do.
impressive.
I don't know how that happens. Maybe they've. Made
I've got to go watch one of those watchmojo.coms on The Simpsons predicting the future because it happens so often.
I think they've made so many episodes and they've talked about everything that a broken clock is correct twice a day kind of
But
thing.
the Trump one's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty cool. It is pretty cool.
So I do think that they are soothsayers.
So do you think Trump's dead? Is the question.
I don't think that he's dead, but don't you think that it's plausible that he is dying?
Dude, speaking of dying, well, he might be dying. Oh, dude, he's 80 years old.
He is dying.
Obviously,
Yeah,
he's
he is
dying.
dying.
But like, okay, the other thing that's happened is, and this is some like real tension that's about to erupt in the U.S.
Yeah.
So, did you hear about Modi going to China? So, do you know like the backstory of why he's in China? I actually did an update on the topic of India and this entire story, and I think it was a good one. I was actually impressed with it myself. afterwards. But it's
Good
an
part.
update, so it's behind a paywall. It's called India versus Pakistan, I think. But anyways, I spoke about it in detail in that, and I realized that I haven't done it on the main pod. But I'll tell you. So basically, Trump essentially put tariffs on India. Including 25% just for not giving them market access to India, and then 25% as a punishment for buying Russian oil. And that has essentially pissed off Indian nationalists, and they're posturing that they have options. And hence they've gone to the SCO Summit, which is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It's a military alliance amongst several Asian countries, and it is seen as a competitor to NATO. And India has gone over there, and he's mending ties with Modi. And that's created some issues where this is going to be interesting. So the federal court in the US has basically said that Trump's tariffs are illegal and invalid, which is big because now this will be referred to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court decides that Trump's tariffs are invalid, then you have a major political crisis in the US.
Why?
Because his entire policy is based on tariffs.
Yeah, but don't they say that about presidential laws all the time?
What? That they're
Does the
invalid?
Supreme Court just come in and say this is valid, this is invalid?
Nothing for this. Nothing this extreme. They do it. So what will happen is that the courts, if Supreme Court decides that, now there's a question whether the Supreme Court would do it because we know that it's tilted towards Trump and the Republicans. Having said that, I don't know how scared the American elite is about all of this stuff because the tariffs, let's be real, is a dud policy. Like, we should put that up.
Sad but true, yeah.
So maybe the Supreme Court judges decide that, the tariffs are invalid, which means that Trump will have to pass a bill in Congress that will give him the powers to do this, and he will have to do it at record pace because midterms are around the corner. And I would say, if history is to be judged, that the Democrats will win the Congress again. And then his bill won't get passed. That means he is a useless president, and that will create huge problems. That's a scary thing. That will create more infighting in the U.S. The U.S. is, I don't know, man. Like, it is pretty obvious that it is a declining power now. And this whole Trump situation is like everyone. Modi was like one of the biggest backers of Trump, and I don't know what happened there, but Trump has completely antagonized Modi and India to the point where, like, I don't think they'll trust him again or trust the U.S. again in the same way, which is bad for American power and for everyone. But Modi is kind of an idiot himself, though. Because he's really pushing way above his weight. He thinks he's like going to side with the Chinese. He's actually going to be left by himself. And that's Trump's point of view as well. That, like, India, if you're going to be part of the Western alliance, you're going to be a member of the Quad, you're going to become the bulwark against China, then you can't be buying Russian oil at a cheaper rate. Man, I don't know. It's just there's a lot of stuff happening. Chess pieces are being set, and
you don't like him.
No, it's not that I don't like him. It's just that I don't know where exactly things are going to go. There's going to be a lot of fighting, though.
Give me this, Harley. In our lifetime, none of this has happened, right?
No, dude. This is a restructuring of the post-war era. So, like, this hasn't happened since 1945.
Are you sure 1945? Because I was thinking maybe like 91.
Yeah, the Soviet Union was, but the Soviet Union was there was an existing structure that was set in 1945, and one of the big pieces of that fell. But the board knew exactly what was happening then. Like, there was this one unipolar power, and they set up all the rules. It wasn't a destructive period. It was actually, I would imagine, a relief for a lot of people that there was this massive hostility, world could go into nuclear war, and like now, there's one end of history, capitalism won.
Yes, and this is history restarting.
This is history restarting.
Okay, yeah.
Capitalism has not won. I mean, I suppose capitalism has won, but like, the
tariffs win.
The U.S. order is being changed, and I don't know where things will go, but I know that there'll be a lot of wars before it's reset. Eventually, there will be an agreement with the great powers. Russia, China, and U.S. will come up with a plan. But before that plan happens and the chessboard is again rearranged, there's going to be a lot of fighting.
Yes. You're talking about diplomatic fighting, right?
I think diplomatic, but also like actual fighting.
Proxy war stuff.
Proxy wars, gray zone fighting, and maybe even full-fledged conventional wars.
I don't know. It sounds pretty doomsday-ish.
No, I'm not. It's not going to be doomsday. I'm not saying the world's going to end, but I'm saying like a lot of people are going to die before we realize where everyone stands.
This is what's everyone, yeah. Because as you're saying, it's not going to be one superpower again. This is just going to the world is just going to break up into regional powers.
Yeah, and I think India is the wild card now.
Hey, theoretically, do you think that would be a good thing? Like when all the dust is settled.
Okay, in a philosophical sense, no. Ideally you want one power that is controlling everyone. It just creates a stable order. It might be an unfair system that one
Yeah,
power
but
might
the
do.
stability is better.
But there's stability.
Yeah.
But when there's multiple fighting for power, it doesn't matter if all of them are right in their own sense. But instability will create problems for everyone. And you can already see it, like, with these tariffs, the whole world is moving towards, again, this tariff economy, which is not good for us. It's not good for like a small population like us that wants to sell to the world.
Yes.
So we're suffering as a consequence, and a lot of people are going to suffer. And that's just the period we're in. But it's exciting times. The next 5 to 10 years will be monumental.
Look, all I'm saying is it's good to be in the political commentary business. It's so good that you can see all the YouTubers that used to just endlessly cover YouTube drama. They still do it, obviously. But it's become so big and such a consistent view getter that they've all moved into the realm of politics as well. They've all become political streamers.
Well, the one good thing is, dude, from my perspective, Modi is on very, very thin ice. He is unpopular now to a large extent.
But let's be real, the only reason that he's unpopular is because Pakistan humiliated him.
There's that, but then it also that skirmish had such profound effects on Indian politics. It wasn't that look, at the end of the day, dude, it wasn't like Pakistan beat them in a war. It was a stalemate because the cost of war was too high for both sides. So that's the reality of it. But the impression of that is that, you had one huge power, India, and then you had a smaller, what people consider to be a failing state. Why is this even Steven, right? And so that created a lot of uncertainty in India. That also coupled with like these tariffs and the foreign policy, what India thought, first of all, they had like really faulty ideas. And now we know that when they waged this attack on Pakistan, they assumed that Pakistan is so weak that they wouldn't even respond to it. That was their calculus, which is a ridiculous calculus to have. But when they do respond, and it's actually like, it's terrifying for them in many ways, because now we know that the Chinese have supplied the Pakistani military with like artificial intelligence warfare and essentially like these computer hacking where they nullify the systems. What is that? Cyber warfare. So which Indians weren't prepared for at all. So that was a big shocker for them. And that shocker actually created different impressions overseas where people started looking at India as like not so powerful. Hence, someone like Trump puts tariffs on because he realizes that they're not that big of a power. And that has meant that these Indians are completely isolated. When they attack, they also assume that the world will support them. They thought in their head that we're fighting against terrorism, world hates terrorism. Everyone knows Pakistan is a terrorist country. Everyone will support us because they live in their own fairyland where they think that this is a reality that everyone in the world believes. And everyone's going to support us. Pakistan will become isolated. They'll lose a war. But in reality, what happened was all of their backers did not condemn Pakistan at all because they don't want to be involved in this war. On the other hand, all of Pakistan's backers like China, Turkey, and they actually came out in front and backed Pakistan openly and said, like, we're going to protect this. And in China's case, supplied them with, like,
China really saved their ass.
In every which way.
But also, don't you think that if you were a international player looking at the realpolitik of the area, they can sit there and say Pakistan's a terrorist organization, but really, if I was an international player and I'm looking at one country that is this very precarious democracy that kind of just keeps battling on with this ancient Victorian bureaucracy system that seems to be collapsing under its own weight, and then you look at Pakistan that, yes, it's a basket case, but it is more or less a military state. It is essentially a citadel.
Yeah.
I'm going with those guys.
Yes, and I think Trump is getting on that same trajectory as well. But I think, like, okay, this is my theory. I don't know if this theory is true, but I think that from American point of view, or at least from Trump administration's point of view, the single advantage, there's two advantages that India bring, and that's the only reason why they care about it. One, it's a huge domestic market. The domestic market is annoying him because he's not getting the access to it as he would want. And the second thing was that India is going to be the bulwark against China. India is going to be the pawn that America uses as the first line of defense against China. These are the two utilities that, from Trump's perspective, India holds. Now, in his second term, he is not interested in, he wants to strike a deal with China. And I think they might eventually strike a deal. And in this, when he is striking a deal with China, he doesn't need, India to shit on China. He's trying to mend relationships with them, so India becomes a bit useless for them. And the market access issue is that India is not providing him that. So what's the point of having India? So
exactly.
Fuck off. And I think India should realize
They've
that
got a weak hand here.
they certainly have a weak hand. Firstly, India believes that they are they want to have their independent and their regional power, so they can have their own course of how they want to go about foreign policy. For most countries that are weak, we don't have that option. We have to pick a side. But India believes that it's strong enough that they can do it themselves. But it's really not.
Yeah.
So what it needs to do is actually a period of peace to be able to build their capability.
So they can bully.
Yeah, and I think even India, and this is my view. I think India's issues with Pakistan and terrorism. Look, it's a normal. The theory is if there's two powers that are really close to each other, they're equal, you're having a conventional war. If there's one side that is a little above or a little above than the other, then you have asymmetric warfare, which includes terrorism. So that's where the situation with India and Pakistan is, where Pakistan is not as big as India, so it can't wage direct conventional war. So it uses asymmetric warfare to basically make their point on Kashmir. And they use terrorism. They're not the only ones that have done it. This is a common thing. So how do you beat this terrorism? Now, you increase your capabilities to such an extent where asymmetry is not even an option for them. Why does Mexico not do terrorist attacks on America? Because they know they'll get fucked over. The power imbalance is way too large to be able to do terrorism or some shit. Or Ukraine. Ukraine has huge issues with Russia, and they're fighting a war now. But before the war began, they weren't launching terrorist attacks because they knew that there was a certain level of power imbalance, or why neighboring countries of China don't do it. So I think for India, if they want to actually get rid of terrorism, and I completely sympathize with them on this issue, state terrorism is one of the worst things that can happen. But the only way to beat it is that you build your capabilities. Once you build your capabilities, this will stop.
Which India can't do.
Well, they have to do it. And for
but the thing is, they can't.
Well,
I think that is also a Fantasyland thing, the idea that India will one day be one of these emerging powers.
I think
it's not even going to get to a Vietnam level.
I think they can. But what they need to do is they need at least 20 years of peace with both. They have two neighbors that are both formidable, China and Pakistan, they have hot borders with them. They need to first establish a period of peace with them. And once they establish peace, they will get some breathing space to build their capabilities. And once they've built their capabilities, and I believe that they can.
Okay, hang on. All right, just explain to me how you think they can build their capabilities. No, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about India not being a third world country, being able to build itself, not even to a first world country status, but the ideal that they always talk about of one day we're going to be like Turkey.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen to India.
Well, I think
it's not going to happen.
Again, I think the thought process is wrong. For one, I think the Trump's market access demands is actually good for India. Because what are the few things that can happen? One, Trump wants access to their dairy market or whatever. Okay, American milk is not going to take over your market, dude, because it's going to be expensive. It's going to be like a rich novelty thing. You can live with that. Who cares? Let your rich people buy it. And if, for example, there's an American product that comes and dominates the Indian market, where it makes the local manufacturers go out of business. Well, you had a fucked system. How can you accept that a country that is first world, that has first world labor standards, is sending goods all the way to India with the transportation cost, and it's selling in a third world country where the buying power is low, and it's still dominating?
I'm sure someone has explained this to Modi. I reckon that
No,
just,
they have it. They're too nationalistic about it. They're looking at it as like this is a Trump assault, where no one with a cool head is thinking, wait, hang on a minute. Actually, we don't need to have this fight with America. If I was in Indian policy making position, I would say two things. Like, firstly, Trump wants access. I think that's actually a good idea. This will increase competition, and if American products dominate in certain areas, that means that the local industry wasn't good enough. They're just propping up these Adanis and Ambanis, where they're subsidizing them heavily, and they have like the entire market, and they're utilizing it. They're abusing it, actually.
see, this is what I'm saying. Like, to me, India just seems like one of these permanently stuck nations. And for exactly the reasons that you're speaking about.
Their main issue is the diversity is such that uniform policy is difficult for them to create.
Totally.
That is the crux of the issue, and I understand that, and that's a much bigger issue. But like these you don't need to be in this like antagonistic relationship with Trump. He wants you. The market access, I would give it to him because I think in the long run it would be better for the Indian economy. Second thing, what he wants to do is he wants India to stop buying Russian oil. Okay, you don't have to do it. But what you can do is like you can say, okay, Trump, I agree with you. We need to stop buying Russian oil, but we're not going to. But we can't do it overnight. So we're going to phase it out. And in that phase out process, and you can convince him by saying like, that will stabilize the oil markets. Your local population wouldn't get, because if India stops buying Russian oil today, it's going to increase the oil prices. Because there'll be more demand for Middle Eastern oil, and it's just the whole oil price is going to go up. So you can convince him by saying like, but we'll phase it out. So we're buying X amount of oil today. Next year it'll be X minus 1. The year after that it'll be X minus 2, and year after that it'll be X minus 3. And by the time you're leaving office, it'll be 0. You convince Trump of that. Then you go to Putin and you say, we're not going to do any of this. We're going to give you waivers. So the policy will stay in effect, but next year we'll give you X minus 1 plus 1 as a waiver, and we'll make a national security ground on that. Trump is only here for 3.5 years. We'll be able to manage the situation. But what you need to do in order to do all of this is actually kill your ego. And you need to pretend to be subservient to Trump because it's in your national interest. But if you're a nationalist that believes like, you're somehow better than... The Indians were calling Modi Vishwaguru. That was like the name. You know what that means? It means the leader of the world. That's what they believed Modi was. That he was the leader of the world. Not one of the leaders, the leader of the world, where everyone is under him. They used to say things like, recently they used to things like 20, 30 years ago, America used to say, India, you're nothing. And today we say, America, you're nothing. It's like, well, you have a very inflated ego. First of all, that's not even true. Like you need...
And look at what we are saying now.
And they need to learn from China as well. Like China is able to engage in this tariff war with America and win because for the last 30 years, they were extremely subservient to America. They would have to take a lot of shit from them. But they did it with their head down because they knew they were building capabilities. One day, we will not have to do this. And that's what India and Modi needs to understand.
Yeah, but man, okay, Modi is not the right leader for any of this.
No, he is absolutely, he's done.
He's done, but also... The man's entire popularity is built off of that, just inflating India's ego massively.
And
so he is not in the position to do any of this like century of humiliation.
Absolutely. And that is the main point. I think if in order for India to actually, first of all, they need to
hang on.
down.
Also, I think that he's shown that this is a very popular formula for India, and India pretty much is just endlessly looking for some morale boost. And so the next leader will be hamstrung by that as well. There's never going to be a leader that's going to be able to come in and just say, like, you know what this reminds me of a lot, actually? I didn't know this, but there's many reasons, obviously. There's, like, the real commie reason for why Ronald Reagan won against Jimmy Carter. But I think another major thing that was against Jimmy Carter was he was pretty much saying to people, because it was the 1970s, he was pretty much saying to people, look, the economy, the way that it's structured, isn't going to keep going like this. Like, it's changing. And the next few years are going to be pretty shit while this is restructuring, but we need a level head to restructure it correctly for you. And Ronald Reagan's response was just like, America's awesome. America's number one. We're always going to be number one. Our brightest days are ahead of us. This is going to be the most fantastic decade in America's history. We will redefine what American exceptionalism is. And obviously everyone just moved to that. And I think that this is the same problem that's happening probably in India, but like in a third world kind of way. Yeah, and it's just like, how are you supposed to win against... Look, he'll definitely win on the kick the bums out thing, but that political thirst is there. That's what like Modi's success shows, because it's built entirely off of that.
Yeah, but I think there's a level of frustration. He's used up all of his political capital. He's done some crazy shit, which didn't really pan out. First of all, he just banned... One day he woke up and he said that all of currency and legal tender completely invalid. And it created a huge upheaval in society where people were queuing up. And he said, like, there's going to be new bills that are going to come in. And so people were queued up at ATMs for ages. And the idea was that this will get rid of corruption somehow. It didn't. But that was what people were like, you know, Modi, he's trying something new. And so we'll do this. And so people realized that this didn't do a lot. But, you know, but he's used up. And even his, like, anti-Muslim stuff, I think a lot of Indians are like tired of that, and the country has gotten a little bit fucked, where I think even they're realizing that maybe it's a bit much. So I think there's an expiry date for that policy as well. Particularly if you don't
think the mood's going the other way?
I think the mood's going the other way, particularly if you're not getting a lot of wins. Like, you need some kind of wins, whether it be like a geopolitical win or an economic win, and he's not getting any of that. He's getting humiliated on a world stage all the time.
Yeah, but he's still got, what, 4 years to go?
Dude, there was one point where Trump every day...
He can't run again, can he?
He absolutely can.
Yeah, but he's so old.
He probably won't, but like I think their plan is that he gets he steps aside, but he becomes the president. So he becomes the governor general. And someone else becomes the prime minister.
But he's got that same thing that Trump has, right? That it's just a one-man show. There's no number two in the sidelines
because
for him.
And you can see as Modi's popularity has gone down, and you know the opposition popularity has gone up. There's a lot of infighting.
Man, you know what they should have really read? The book by Jim Collins, Good to Great. It really shows.
What's the thesis of that?
The thesis is that you have these superstar CEOs that kind of rise a company from the ground to being like a real contender, and then they retire, but the entire company is sort of just like a mini cult that is based off of this guy's ego, and he is undeniably a great CEO, and he did that, but he created no leadership pipeline. It was all just on him. He's the star. Everything's based around him. And so when he retires, there's a vacuum. And usually what happens is they fight amongst each other and it goes to shit. And he was saying that the great companies are always by CEOs that just stay in the wayside, pretty much just like Xi Jinping, you know, just not in the limelight at all, and create like a pipeline of leadership that happens after it. And you can very much see this with the Albanese government, for instance, where everyone knows that there's like 5 or 6 potential prime ministers on the front bench. And you know, in the Liberal Party with Malcolm Turnbull, there was just Malcolm Turnbull. Like, every time you ever have that kind of leadership dynamic, it always leads to failure, regardless. Man, and that's what's happened there.
I agree. But the other thing is, and look, Australia and the West is slightly more evolved society, and I'll tell you why. In our part, like in India, Pakistan, and everything, we're still in a semi-feudal political setup. So what happens is, okay, think of it from like olden days. You've got the king at the top, and then you've got lords, and then you've got like further, and the pyramid just keeps growing, right? And the king obviously gets the most share, and then lords get second. What happens is that the structure is based on the idea that this person is king.
Yeah.
So what happens is that if that guy's not king, and one of the lord becomes king, every other lord has a problem with that. Because there's no consensus on who's gonna. So what they do is they usually choose a son,
successor,
a son,
yeah,
or a daughter, someone from the same blood. Because it's what the position is actually held by families
Yeah.
as opposed to the individual.
Yeah.
Because the son or the daughter,
But Modi doesn't have that.
Modi doesn't have that.
He doesn't have a son.
And that's why on the other side of the opposition, you still have the family
The feudal
heritage
system.
going.
Yeah.
Because, and that's why like Rahul Gandhi, the handsome opposition leader, he happens to be the only person that all the opposition can agree becomes the prime minister. Not because he's the best candidate, but because he represents the king's lineage. And that is how the structure is set. Because if he's not the king and someone else is the king, then it doesn't lead to a smooth transition. It leads to infighting and chaos. And that's going to happen with Modi. That's why, like, there's a reason why the king system worked for so long, because it has its advantages, you know? The population also agrees with the king model because they believe in this story that, you know, the kin symbolizes the older king himself, the father himself. Like, the same blood flows through their veins, and there's, like, you know, Lion King and all of this idea that there's inherited rights. So the population understands that, and it works well with the lords as well, because then you know where the power rests and everyone can arrange themselves accordingly. So the successor, dude, is going to be hard for Modi in the best of scenarios. The easiest thing in such issues, in such circumstances, is literally to have a son or a daughter become the next person.
Yeah, but also in that instance, I mean, there's many an example of kings back in the day that would put on, say, their brother or a cousin or something like that. There has to be someone.
Same family.
You have to be grooming a successor that whole time. And if you don't have that, and then you just randomly pop up someone that has, like, no cult of personality behind them or anything like that, they're just going to come up and fail.
Yeah.
So,
but
I don't know. He's screwed. He's screwed.
Yeah, he's screwed. It. I would be shocked if he wins the next election. And I think, like, yeah, all of this was avoidable if they were just calm and a bit more, you know, thoughtful about their policies.
Now,
and just less emotional.
Yes. Just before we go, I do want to really bring this up. That China podcast that we did, there was one comment that really struck me, and I think that they said it better than we did, where they were saying that, I think it was a Chinese guy that was saying, you have to understand the way that we look at the government in China is it's more or less just getting a job in the private sector. Like, if you get a job in the CCP, you're not really there to run for elections or anything like that. You are there to hit KPIs, and if you hit those KPIs, you go up, and if you don't hit those KPIs, you get fired or you just stay where you are. It's run like a corporation. And as a result of that, there's no theatrics, there's no endlessly... Even the biggest policy wonk in Australia, for instance, would have to be thinking about elections a lot of their time. There are so many people that I speak to in politics that their entire life... Think about what a waste of political expenditure this is. So many people that are endlessly just thinking about the next election. Like, once one election finishes, they're thinking about the next election after that. Yeah. This is a huge part of the political infrastructure in Australia. This is something that they don't have to worry about in China at all. It is all results. That's what that guy was saying. And I was just like, damn, that's impressive. Like, again, take away any of the ideological background of that. That is an organization that is set up to be ruthlessly efficient, to be ruthlessly good at achieving goals. You can't do any of that stuff here. The other thing is, there was another example that they were using. Someone else was, I can't remember what it was, but there was this premier in China, or I can't remember what the word is, but their version of like a premier of a state, like a region. Anyway, he was really unpopular because he was just like, all right, we're reorganizing the economy and we're moving the town here and we're putting all the factories up here. And everybody was saying, oh, we don't need to do this. This is a waste of money. You're wasting all of this money. How dare you? You're just forcing us around. You're acting like a dictator. He was really, really unpopular. A couple of years later, there was massive flooding in the upper regions. And so they just released all the water out of their dams. And then all the water came down, and it destroyed cities or regions of cities along the river, and the only one that survived was this unpopular premier that was able to do all of those things. What does that tell you? Like, it's just like you would not be able to do that in a democracy. You could not do that.
And I think if you ask Modi, he will say exactly that is my problem, that I am always campaigning. I can't.
See, I could not imagine trying to run India. It would be so bad. Like, it's a massive democracy. Okay, there's massive problems with America's democracy purely on its demographics and population size. But you're what, times 5ing that for India? And you've got a fifth of the money? Holy hell.
Yeah.
What an awful job.
And in Modi's case, he has basically educated his population in such a nasty way where he's now stuck in his own problem where his population, his electorate base is asking him to do things that are exactly are the opposite of what the Indian national interest is.
Yep.
But he can't get out of it. I'll give you like one, for example, if he basically capitulates to Trump, which is actually good for the Indian economy, it's going to, because, you've got to remember, US is India's largest trading partner. Like, this is a big deal for them. So it's obviously, it makes sense for them to actually keep their head down and try to appease Trump, tell him he deserves the Nobel Prize and shit and try to get yourself a good deal. Because honestly speaking, as much as I'm against Trump's tariffs, anyone that's tried to stick up to Trump has actually kind of lost out. You had Canada that is still in a situation because Canada and European Union together were saying we're not going to capitulate to Trump. We're not going to give up on our interests. And then European Union just struck a deal with Trump. And now Canada's left on its own with no leverage. So you're screwed. So I don't know if you want to be screwed like that, India. But the problem that Modi faces is that if he actually does what's good for the Indian economy, he will be voted out because everyone wants him to fuck with Trump.
Yes.
Because they think that their national pride is hurt. This is one example. Another example is...
And it's not going to go like Canada.
It's not going to go like... The other example is, because India hates Pakistan, right? They say that... And they hold a lot of clout in cricket, in world cricket. So they're trying to ostracize Pakistan. So one of the things that they were doing was that they weren't playing any bilateral games with them, but then they were playing ICC international events where a bunch of countries were playing together. They'll play with Pakistan. But after the war, their population were like, we're not going to play any more games with them, right? Now, there was supposed to be an Asia Cup. Asia Cup is between India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, all the Asian countries. What this does is basically Asia Cup is no one watches any of the games. They only watch India versus Pakistan game. And that makes millions and millions of dollars. And that money is then distributed to all the smaller countries. So Sri Lanka gets a chunk of it. Bangladesh gets a chunk of it. Nepal would get a chunk of it. So everyone's businesses are run based on India versus Pakistan. The Indian population is telling them not to play with Pakistan. All of these boards say that's not a good idea. We're fucked. The broadcasters say that we're not going to pay you the same amount of money if there's no India versus Pakistan matches. And so India realizes, shit, we're getting isolated here. Instead of isolating Pakistan, everyone's on us. Now, the Indian population is saying, we don't want the money. It's peanuts to us. $100 million for whatever 3 years of broadcast rights. We don't care about that. Get rid of that. But the Indian government is too scared to tell them that oh no, if we do that, then all these other countries are going to go against us. And Indian population would then say, fuck them. This is about our national pride. Fuck Pakistan. And so now you're in a situation where every right policy goes against the popular sentiment and you lose the election. I think for Modi, he's damned if he does, if he doesn't. He's going to be voted out either way.
Yeah. I'm happy about that, by the way.
I'm happy about that too. But,
yeah, he's fucked. I hate him. He actually might be my most hated world leader.
He's up there.
Well, just such a dick.
I have a special love for him. This is the worst jumper to wear during this thing. If there's any Indian watching this, they'd be like, boy, it's full of shit.
Yeah, obviously.
But they also don't listen to Pakis anyways. They think we're all just stupid and crazy.
Just before we leave, I also do want to put this on record that there was another Chinese guy in those comments that was saying, really interesting that you picked up on how much the Forbidden Palace sucks.
Yeah.
There is a long history of Chinese emperors complaining about how much the Forbidden Palace sucks.
It did suck. I don't know why they did that. I think it
I
would
don't
just
know
be
why
better
they
if they
didn't
had
change it as well.
just plant more trees.
That would have solved
so
so
much
many
better.
problems.
But yeah, I wouldn't want to live there, of course. So I completely understand that. Thank you everyone for joining us for this episode. Note, from now onwards, Jordan is going to be doing his self-help channel every Tuesday. So we will be streaming the pod Monday from next week onwards. So if you want to watch the pod live, then Mondays 7:30 is the way to go. Otherwise, just watch it on YouTube or become a patron and get immediate access to it. But thank you, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Make sure you sign up to the update.